Before I comment on today's gospel reading, I just wanted to remind you that we have our Catholic Women's League online auction, and I believe the deadline is this coming Saturday in the evening. So be sure to go to our website and check out the numerous items that they have available there. You can bid on it. It's a good way to share some money with the CWL for a good cause, and also hopefully get a gift for yourself or maybe for a loved one. In regards to today's gospel reading, our Lord, it mentions at the beginning that he had left Tyre and Sidon and he passed along the Sea of Galilee, and then he went up the mountain where he sat down and great crowds came to him. Now, as we can imagine our Lord passing from one town to the next, he would have spoken in those towns. He probably did some miracles in those towns, and great crowds would have gathered around him. And even if people didn't hear him speak, just seeing a crowd, people would be curious, like, what's going on here? So people have a tendency to follow the crowd, but they would have heard, there's this guy and he's a great prophet, he speaks so well and he's doing miracles. Well, people want to see. So people would have left everything. They would have left their shops, they would have left their homes just to see this great spectacle, we could say. And, once they start witnessing the miracles, Jesus is up on the mountain. So people down below looking up, everybody can see. So when they bring a person who's lame and then he's healed, he's able to walk, and, his joy at being able to walk, people witness this. And it's like one spectacle after another. It's like people could not tear themselves away. So it mentions that they stayed, or at least some of them stayed with our Lord for 3 days. So our Lord says, I have compassion for the crowd because they have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat, and I do not want to send them away hungry, for they might faint on the way. So they were just so enthralled by our Lord, by his words of wisdom, by the miracles they're witnessing, but also because there's speculation amongst the crowd, whispers that this is the Messiah. This is the one they've all been waiting for. So they don't want to miss anything. So they stay with our Lord. But yes, notice how our Lord has compassion for the crowd. And we see this partially in the many miracles that he's working. So he has love. The word compassion literally means to suffer with. And it means that when you suffer with someone, you care about them, you understand their sufferings, you can relate to their sufferings, you want to help them. So when we consider the incarnation, God becoming man, well, God could have redeemed us in different ways, but he chose to become man. And part of the reason he became man is so that we could see him as we see ourselves. We could relate to him as we relate to each other, so that we would feel more comfortable with him, but also so that he can show us that he understands the human condition, that he knows what we suffer. He knows our experiences. He knows what it is to be hungry. He knows what it is to be persecuted, to have all these terrible things happening to him. So he can relate to us. He has compassion for us. And his healing of the physical ailments of these people, all of these things point to the spiritual healing also. So he notices that, some of them have been with him for 3 days. They have nothing to eat. He doesn't want them to faint. It's obvious they are hungry. So there are the 7 loaves and a few small fish, and our Lord orders the disciples to distribute them. Afterwards, they take up 7 baskets full of the leftover pieces. Why did our Lord ask them to take up the leftover pieces? It doesn't make any sense. People could have just taken it home with them. They could have taken it on their way back. They could have eaten it maybe later. So the reason our Lord asked them to take up the leftover pieces is to emphasize the greatness of the miracle. So you start with 7 loaves and you have 7 baskets full. And this miracle is repeated twice, this multiplication of the loaves and the fish, to emphasize that our Lord, because he's God, can multiply the loaves and the fish. And in many ways, these 2 great miracles, they point to the multiplication of our Lord's body, his own body, when he was going to give us the Eucharist. So he would multiply his presence body, blood, soul, and divinity wherever the bread is, wherever the wine is that is consecrated at Mass, so that we can all receive him. And so when our Lord says he has compassion for the crowds, he's aware of our physical needs, of our worldly needs, of our needs here and now. But most importantly, he's aware also of our spiritual needs. And the greatest spiritual need that we have is our need for God. Now, some people may not acknowledge this. Some people who are atheists, they reject this idea. But deep down, everyone has a desire for God. In fact, it has been argued by philosophers that this is why in every major culture in the world in times past, they all believed in some form of deity, sometimes more than one deity. But it's natural for mankind to believe and to want to believe in the supernatural. So St. Augustine points out that we have a need for God. He says, our hearts are restless until they rest in thee, O Lord. You have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee, O Lord. So we're all seeking happiness. We're all seeking fulfillment in many ways, but it's only in God that we can find that true fulfillment. Now, ultimately, that will be fulfilled in heaven. But even here and now, for those who are very close to God, it's a great consolation. People come and pray in the church, and sometimes they're there for many, many hours. It's not because they desperately need some favor from God. It's because they love our Lord. They want to be with our Lord. They want to commune with our Lord. Many saints would go into ecstasy when they received Holy Communion, not just because of their own sentiments, but because they were so close to God that God revealed something to them of his greatness, of his glory. In other words, they experienced something of heaven. This is why Holy Communion is referred to as a foretaste of heaven. So yes, our Lord is aware of our physical, worldly needs, but our greatest need is our spiritual need, our need for God, our need to commune with God, our need to be loved by God, our need to love God. And this is also why our Lord came. And so this miracle of the multiplication of the loaves and the fish points to the multiplication of our Lord's body, blood, soul, and divinity when he institutes the Eucharist, and which every priest does in commemoration of our Lord. So every priest is an agent or an instrument of Christ. So when the priest says those same words over the bread and the wine on the altar, Christ is working through the priest as his instrument, and Christ becomes truly present, body, blood, soul, and divinity. How great a love God has for us in humbling himself, not just in becoming man, but humbling himself to become present under the appearance of bread and wine, allowing us to consume him, to eat him, so that he can be in our souls, so that we can be fully united to him in love, so that we can receive his life, his blessings, his graces, his inspirations, and his consolations. So yes, he is a God of compassion. Will he always grant us a miracle? No. But no matter what difficulty we are in, he will always grant us the grace that we need to get through any and every difficulty. And he will do this if we are close to him, if we come to him through prayer.